In 2011, the TV series Terra Nova was released, blending an exciting mix of science fiction and adventure. It revolves around a time travel journey to the prehistoric era in an attempt to save humanity from extinction. The story combines exploring the world of dinosaurs with survival wars in a world full of challenges. In this summary, we will cover the first 3 episodes of Season 1, where the team begins to adapt to the new environment and deal with life-threatening dangers. If you would like to continue with the summary of the remaining 13 episodes, feel free to let us know in the comments. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world was on the verge of environmental collapse, and the only hope for humanity's survival lay in the past, 85 million years ago. During this time, vegetation had become extremely scarce due to the Earth no longer being suitable for farming. When he returns home with an orange, his family is overjoyed. Since the air is completely polluted and people live in harsh conditions, the government passed a law allowing only 2 children per couple to ensure control over the population. Since Elizabeth has 3 children, she must hide her youngest daughter in a secret compartment within the wall. To keep the police from finding her, Elizabeth hides her daughter. After the police receive a tip-off, a group of officers bursts into the family's apartment and starts searching the place. Zoe is terrified by the noise coming from outside, so she begins to cry quietly. The men manage to find her. Gene decides to protect his daughter and gets into a struggle with the officers, knocking them down, but he gets hit with a taser and is arrested. Years later, Elizabeth visits the prison to see her husband and discovers that he's very sick because the prison is contaminated. She went there to inform him that she and the kids. They meet in a new land. Gene tells Elizabeth that their family needs to go there because he knows that they'll have a chance to start a new life. But Elizabeth explains that the government won't allow her to take Zoe with her because according to the law, the girl shouldn't have even been born. Since the visit is secret, the woman only has 5 minutes before the guards arrive. Just as she's about to leave, she hands Gene an air filter. After his wife leaves, the prisoner notices that there's a laser gun hidden inside the mask. He realizes he can use it to escape. And indeed, after escaping from prison, he boards a train and removes the tracking chip that was implanted in his skin. His next mission is to retrieve a bag full of weapons and money that his wife had hidden. After that, he heads to the collection point where Elizabeth, the kids, and Josh are waiting. Before he leaves, he says goodbye to his fiancée, promising her that he will find a way to bring her to the new land, even if it means coming back for her later. Gene, after handing the bag of money to an officer he had made a deal with to help him, prepares for what's next. He grabs the bag that Zoe had hidden and takes a shortcut to reach the bridge that the pilgrims need to cross to get to the gate. When he finally finds his family, he realizes the guards are suspicious of him, so he hands the bag to his wife. When Elizabeth sees her husband being arrested by security, she orders Josh and the others to cross the gate, telling them she'll catch up with them soon. After confirming that his family has made it through, Gene decides to take action. He attacks the guards and then runs toward the gate. Although they manage to reach the new land, the man and his 5-year-old daughter are considered illegal. Since Elizabeth is a renowned doctor, she holds on to hope that her family will be forgiven, as the settlers will need her expertise in this strange place. Technology has allowed humanity to create a gateway that connects to 75 million years in the past, making it impossible to predict exactly what dangers the pilgrims need to protect themselves from. Now, when they arrive at the camp, the citizens of 2029 meet Commander Taylor. He gives a speech, stating that this is the beginning of a new civilization, and his goal is to help these people avoid repeating the same mistakes that destroyed the planet in the 22nd century. When he learns about the presence of illegal immigrants, the commander calls the couple to speak with them privately. As expected, after reading Elizabeth's resume, the man welcomes her to his colony, knowing that she will be very valuable there. He then asks one of the guards to take the doctor so she can see her children. He makes sure that Gene isn't a threat and tells him that he could work in the agriculture department. While his family settles into their new home, Zoe decides to wander around the camp and sees a brachiosaurus eating leaves from above. She decides to feed it. When her parents see their daughter interacting with these creatures, they're initially terrified, but then they realize they aren't harmful. They look at the creatures in awe, as none of them had ever imagined they would see a dinosaur up close one day. The next morning, Gene starts his work in the garden and is assigned to trim the grass along the fences surrounding the camp. While he's using a knife to cut the plants, Gene sees a massive insect crawling on the fence, and he's startled. After falling, he gets up and continues his work right away, knowing that he needs to prove himself useful if he wants to stay alive there with his family. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is working at the hospital, treating a patient who has a large parasite on his back that she needs to remove. On his first day at the camp, Josh meets Skye and accompanies her to her home, where she lives with other young people around her age. In this era, Skye convinces the newcomer to leave the camp and take a drive through the forest, and they eventually end up at a waterfall. After swimming for a while, Josh notices some equations drawn on a rock. Skye tells him that these markings were made recently, but she has no idea what they mean. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Elizabeth is treating a thief who was arrested in the morning. Suddenly, the man grabs her, and the guard standing nearby has to hand over his weapon to save the doctor. After stealing the gun, the thief barely escapes and is almost caught when he tries to pass through the gates, but he is arrested after the officers recognize him from the assault on his house. The man was also in the police force, so he quickly realizes that the thief is up to something wrong. He immediately goes after Carter and manages to stop him before he gets shot. After the newcomer saves the commander, Taylor realizes that he can trust him and decides to reveal what happened in this place a few years ago. According to Taylor, the criminal who tried to kill him is from another camp made up of a group of people who decided to separate from the new land. These rebels are known as the Sextons. They came from the 6th group of pilgrims who followed him to this place. One day, this group escaped in the middle of the night after stealing a large amount of equipment and weapons. Afterward, they climb a mountain, and the view of the city from the top is breathtaking. The commander informs him that he has been promoted and will now be part of the security team. As he looks down, the two see 2 military vehicles approaching quickly. He reports to his base that new rebels have arrived. The rebels, as they move toward the new land, are being followed by hunger and try to eliminate them with their weapons. As the rebels fire their guns, they're attacked by another predator that suddenly appears. When they see the creature approaching the gates, Taylor steps forward to grab the reins, as he knows how to handle the situation. After getting out of the vehicle, the man fires shots to draw attention, but as he's about to be attacked, he turns back to save himself. Both of them manage to reach the camp safely. Meanwhile, the guards prepare themselves for an incoming attack, and when the gates close, the predator decides to leave. The next problem that the commander and his team need to deal with is just beginning. The rebels are the fierce ones who managed to infiltrate the base. However, Emily reveals that she went there just to save Carter. She knows that Taylor won't easily hand over his prisoner. The woman suggests making a deal and offers a box full of meteorite iron as payment to get her companion back. Taylor knows that this material is extremely rare and that the Sextons control the mines. Because of this, he agrees to the deal. In addition to Carter, Emily requests medical supplies and ammunition, but the commander refuses to give the rebels any weapons. After receiving the medical supplies, Emily and her team return to their camp. On the way, they see Skye's car, and her group used it to head straight into the forest. The rebels stop to steal the car's energy cells. But they're caught off guard when a killer arrives and easily kills one of their team members. Taylor, after checking the surveillance cameras, discovers that Josh and the others left the area and stole a car to go out and have fun. When Gene finds out that his son is in danger in the forest, he loses his mind and informs his wife about what happened. Elizabeth decides to help her husband, and together they set out to search for him. At the end of the day, they return to the car to head back, only to discover that the energy cells have been stolen and they won't be able to start the car again. On the other side of the river, they see a rebel vehicle parked, and they decide to go there to try to recover the battery for their car. They soon discover that there's an injured man in the vehicle, and they have no choice but to team up with him to avoid being eaten by a predator that's getting closer. Fortunately, they manage to close the armored car's door just before the killer can reach them in seconds. Now, the next challenge is to get out of there, as the energy converter of their war tank has been destroyed. When she realizes that Drake is severely injured, the girl asks Josh for help to stop the bleeding and tries to think of a way to get her friends out of there safely. As the situation grows more tense, more killers appear and begin circling the car. If the group doesn't leave quickly, more dinosaurs will show up to hunt them. This species is used to hunting in packs at night, and they're trapped. In a desperate move, she finds a radio inside the car and contacts the commander, who is searching for them in the forest with the rescue team. The boy tries to pinpoint their location, but suddenly, the predators launch an attack and begin trying to destroy the car. In an attempt to slow them down, they grab pistols and start firing. However, the bullets are not enough to penetrate the armored skin of the dinosaurs. Fortunately, the young group manages to scare off the creatures with the sound of the gunshots and starts to move. But the radio connection is cut off, and they can no longer contact the commander. At this point, she decides it's time to escape before the monsters return. Her friends are unable to exit the car, and she runs aimlessly through the forest. Suddenly, a killer appears and attacks. Fortunately, Tango finds her just as the search team arrives. When Josh sees his daughter badly injured, he tries to calm her down, while Elizabeth performs first aid with Tasha's help. At the same time, they discover the location of the other group and head toward them. Suddenly, the savage killers return to begin another attack. After tearing off a door from the car, the creature grabs Hunter and drags him out by his leg. His friends rush out to save him. They begin firing at the creature, and when the dinosaur retreats, they help Hunter get up and run toward the car they used to reach the forest. While Max and Josh are installing the energy cells back into the car, Max takes responsibility for protecting the team, but the ammunition starts running low. At that moment, Max is attacked, and the group turns into a defensive stance, preparing to fight back against the approaching predators. Just as the monsters are about to strike, the commander arrives with his team, using night vision goggles to track the creatures during the rescue operation. The guards split up to drive the predators away, while Sky and her group get into the car. When Gene sees one of the creatures approaching his son, he quickly orders him to fire, and he manages to hit the dinosaur in the middle. Once the predators move away, Taylor and Gene go after Jack because they want to take her to the camp for medical treatment. But when they check the war tank, they realize that the rebel has escaped. After the rescue, the group returns to the camp, and Elizabeth feels relieved when she sees that her son is still alive. After dinner, Gene and his family leave the house to gaze at the sky. They are happy when they see the full moon, because in 2029, the air was so polluted that it became impossible to see the sky. In the middle of the night, a group of soldiers is transporting supplies to Site 3 when suddenly they realize that the car's tire has been punctured. When the men step out to fix the problem, they are surrounded by a group of animals watching them from the trees and become victims of the attack. The next morning, Alyssa takes the new recruits in the camp for a survival training session and teaches them what they need to do if they are caught in the forest. Afterward, the recruits return to the camp. The woman goes with the commander on a search mission for the missing guards, who were supposed to have returned to the new land a long time ago. In a short time, she becomes one of the soldiers he trusts the most. So, the man calls for this mission. When the team finally manages to find the missing guards, they notice that they were killed in a terrifying way, their eyes having been gouged out. In an attempt to identify the type of creature that attacked them, the soldiers decide to bring the bodies back to the camp. Gene asks his wife for help in conducting the analysis.
With the help of Malcolm, her colleague, Elizabeth decides to gather some information to help the guards identify the predators. According to her, the bites and the attack patterns don't match any species recorded in the database, meaning they are dealing with a creature that no one has seen before in this area. That night, While she's in the room with her husband, Jean hears a scary sound coming from outside and goes out to check what it is. At that moment, he and Josh see a group of prehistoric birds and start throwing some rocks to scare them off, but they are forced to run and hide.
After getting bitten while trying to fend off the animals, Jean realizes that they might be the ones who killed the soldiers. Malcolm, after receiving a warning about the presence of ducks, suggests sending a search team to the area to monitor them and discover what's causing these attacks. He explains that these small animals only attack if they feel threatened. However, Taylor disagrees with his strategy and says that all scientists are forbidden from leaving the compound until they find a reliable way to stop these creatures. After a few hours, while Josh is walking with Skye in the market, he sees the same birds that attacked them the night before gathered on the fence mesh. But now, these animals are in a much larger flock and begin attacking humans without any clear reason. Quickly, the two of them flee and take shelter under a table, just like all the other people in the area. After a few minutes, the flock moves on. Fortunately, all 36 people who were injured survived. When Malcolm finds the body of one of these creatures, he decides to take it to the lab for study and talks about his theory on why the creatures are attacking. According to him, these creatures are migrating, which is why they haven't been seen in the area before. The bad news is that if this theory is correct, a larger number of these birds will arrive soon, meaning more attacks are likely in the near future. After conducting a scan of the surroundings with the help of aerial cameras and activating heat sensors, Taylor and his team discover that millions of these birds are hiding under the trees. According to Elisa, 3 years ago, an exploration team found eggshells in the area. However, since there was no sign of nearby animal life, they decided that this would be a good place to build the new land. Since the eggshells were nutrient-rich, the soil there was very fertile. This was one of the reasons Taylor considered the area a good choice for establishing the camp. What no one expected at the time was that this area could be a nesting ground for a type of animal. Upon hearing this, Malcolm comes to the conclusion that the birds are attacking because they see humans as intruders who have entered their nest. By occupying the area, they have taken over the space where the birds are used to laying their eggs. Indy, knowing that more attacks are coming, Taylor orders Elisa to announce to the civilians to hide in their homes until they figure out how to fend off these creatures. Malcolm and Elizabeth need live specimens of this type, as the scientists need them to study their physiology. After that, Taylor and Jean head out for a hunt, and Taylor manages to gather samples, which are immediately sent to the lab. After some studies, Elizabeth and Malcolm discover that they can use the pheromones of these creatures to lure them to another location, since this substance controls their egg-laying instinct. While the scientists are preparing 50 liters of pheromones to be transported, which will be used to draw the creatures away from the camp, at that exact moment, the camp is invaded by a swarm of dinosaurs attempting to break into the residents' homes. Despite all the doors and windows being closed, the birds manage to break into Elizabeth's house and attack Mark, who was standing guard to protect the young people. In an attempt to escape the attack, Josh orders everyone to run to the safe room. But Zoe is frozen with fear and hides under the table. When Josh sees his little sister in danger, he runs to the kitchen to save her, carrying the girl to the room with the others. After placing the synthesized pheromone inside the barrel, Taylor transports it outside the city, and the creatures follow it, drawn by the scent. The next morning, all the residents of New Terra return to their normal activities, but Elizabeth is worried about her husband since he hasn't returned from his mission yet. When she finally sees the vehicle approaching the gates, she feels relieved and runs to embrace Jim. And when asked about the success of the mission, the commander says that the pterodactyls are now in the mountains and have chosen that place as their new home. During a field study, a scientist was observing the insects living in that part of the forest. He stepped out of his lab to search for one that had escaped, but when he got outside, Jonathan saw a carnotaur and was mesmerized by it before being eaten. 3 days later, when Taylor realizes he can't contact the scientist, he decides to go check on what happened to him. And since Elizabeth is a doctor, She goes with him to write a report. When they arrive, the team notices that the place has been broken into and enters the lab to start the investigation. As he walks around, the commander finds a room full of patients suffering from some kind of dissociative disorder. Although they seem physically fine with normal vital signs, none of them have any idea where they are, having completely lost their memories of the past years. When Elizabeth watches a recording made by Dr. Jonathan before he was eaten, she discovers that there is a pathogenic element behind this memory loss. So she decides to continue his research to ensure that her team doesn't get exposed to the same pathogen and suffer the same symptoms. According to Taylor, the team won't return to the city until Elizabeth figures out what's going on because the commander doesn't want to risk exposing the entire colony to the disease. The next morning, Jim goes to talk to Alyssa to find out why his wife hasn't returned yet. He discovers that the site has been put under quarantine and that the previous night, the commander had called to report the presence of a potential pathogen. That's why no one should go there to avoid exposing themselves to the risk of infection. When Jim realizes that Elizabeth might be in danger, he immediately decides to go after her and asks to borrow Malcolm's vehicle. However, the scientist insists on going with him. When the two arrive at Site 3, they spot two dinosaurs trying to chew on the cables that supply power to the base. But the men manage to scare them off and pass through the gate. Knowing that the area is contaminated, they use air filters to protect themselves. Suddenly, Jim is attacked by his own wife because she doesn't remember him. But she does remember Malcolm since they studied together in medical school years ago. When Jim sees Elizabeth hugging another man after attacking him, he is shocked and struggles to understand what is happening. After a brief conversation with his colleague, Malcolm realizes that she has lost the last 20 years of her memory and still believes she is in university. After reading the notes Elizabeth had written before, Malcolm discovers that she was exposed to a pathogen that causes memory loss. He then asks for her help in finding a cure. At that moment, Jim hears a noise coming from inside the base and decides to search the area to ensure there is no hidden danger. While investigating, he finds Commander Taylor, who storms into the bunker and takes the officer hostage, believing he is still an intruder. After knocking down the man he assumes to be his enemy, Taylor sets off toward New Earth, determined to rescue his wife as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Jim returns to the lab to report what happened. Now, the team has an even bigger problem to deal with. If Taylor reaches the colony, he could infect all the inhabitants. And since communication with Site 3 has been cut off, Jim is unable to contact Elisa to inform her of what happened, so the scientists must act quickly to find a cure before it's too late. At that moment, he asks Malcolm for help to take the man to the hospital because he has collapsed in the lab. When they arrive, the doctor begins showing the first symptoms of memory loss and asks himself, "Why is this happening to my body?" Suddenly, a dinosaur appears, and Jim locks himself and Malcolm inside a room to ensure the creature cannot reach them. After creating a bait to lure the creature, the officer manages to trap it, and now he must push Malcolm out, as the man has started to lose his sanity. At that moment, Elizabeth appears, and Jim explains that he had no other choice. Unlike Malcolm, the officer shows no symptoms since he was exposed to the infectious substance, meaning his body has developed an immunity to it. After hacking into the computers, Jim and Elizabeth discover that one of the scientists working at the base had been conducting a secret genetic experiment. By accident, he released an infectious substance capable of causing memory loss into the air. Suddenly, the officer begins to sneeze, and they realize he has a cold. Elizabeth quickly notices that this is the reason why he wasn't affected by the infectious substance. The doctor believes that the cold virus blocks the memory loss-causing substance. With this discovery, she is able to develop a potential remedy. The next morning, when they arrive at the new land, they can begin to work on a solution.
Elizabeth discovers that the captain has been captured while trying to infiltrate the camp. She then uses the substance she developed the previous night to help him recover his memories.
Here's a summary of the first 3 episodes of the 2011 series Terra Nova. If you want us to continue summarizing the remaining 13 episodes, let us know in the comments.